we can go right ahead and get into this next segment, which is going to be talking about the finals as a whole. So I'm just going to get it right out of the way. I thought the entire finals and I thought this entire series was just boring. Like before I answer your questions in the before I answer your question in the comments, I just want to like point this out just a little bit. I mean, this was game one, 107 to 89. Then this was game two. Then this was game three. Let me just go ahead and find game four. Here was game four, and game five was here. So if you notice, every like Celtics 107 to 89, Celtics 105 98, Celtics 106 99. And it's like every single one of these games, Celtics they ended up losing, but the Mavericks they ended up winning 122 to 84 and then 106 to 88. It seems like every single one of these games was a blowout. And every single one of these games was like almost decided right from the jump. And I can't help but feel like that is just ridiculously boring. Like the Celtics seem to be every single game was a blowout, not just game four. I'm answering the question in the comments. Every single one of these games was a blowout. You could tell who was going to win the final game the second it was going out. Like this final series was very very boring. So now that I got that out of the way, I might as well go ahead and just answer these questions in the comments because there is a lot of them and it's discussing like the main premise is like, if Luka Doncic and if Luka and Kyrie if they had another piece of the puzzle, they would have ended up beating this Celtics team. And I don't think that's true like whatsoever. In my personal opinion, I don't think that's true at all. Like I do understand that it's like, if you have multiple options on the team and if you have like, other scoring options, it makes your life a lot easier. But I just don't agree that if you take, obviously, Luka was incredibly dominant throughout the entirety of the postseason. I'm not saying that he wasn't. That is not what I'm arguing here. But what I am arguing is that I don't really think it would have mattered what other player stepped up in this series. The result still would have ended up being the same regardless. Like, Luka in the postseason, he was great. But it doesn't matter whether or not you're great, like if your team isn't going to just help you. Now, I understand having a third option, it might help you, but I don't think it would have. I genuinely don't. Not if, because then there would be the problem of sharing the ball. Because if he does have a third option on the team, Luka wouldn't be getting these kinds of options. Like Luka wouldn't be getting the amount of shot attempts that he would usually get in these games. Therefore, he wouldn't be producing these kinds of numbers in every single game. Because while the numbers like points, rebounds, and assists, they are impressive, the field goal and the shooting percentages are horrible. They're really bad. And if you minimize the amount of shot attempts that he takes by giving him another option, he's not going to produce as much points at an efficient rate because he's shooting so inefficiently. The same thing goes for Kyrie Irving over in this because like and look at him, his numbers were horrible throughout the entirety of the postseason. He wasn't helping anyone on the team, and it's like his performance could have been like all you needed was a good Kyrie Irving. That's literally all you needed, and the series would have been a little bit more competitive. And they just didn't get that from Kyrie in a single one of these games. Most of Luka Doncic's points that were scored, like in these averages, they were when the team was down, and essentially garbage time. Because when the team is down by so much, it's usually garbage time. I'm not discrediting his numbers. I'm just saying that they would look a little bit different if he had another option on the team. And really, Kyrie Irving needed to step up in a much bigger way than he did in this game. And and not in this game, but like, in this series as a whole. And wouldn't he be getting better looks though? Kyrie got fantastic looks and he was still missing. And no, I don't think that would have changed whether or not he would have gotten any better looks because let's face it, who on the Celtics team is going to leave Luka Doncic wide open regardless of how many good players are on that team? Nobody is going to give Luka an inch of room. Nobody is going to try to do that. Luka has to work for all of his buckets. Same thing with Kyrie. They aren't going to just leave them if they have a third scoring option on the team. It's just that's just not how it works, and that's like you're you're up against like this was a very similar offense to how Cleveland ended up what's it called? This was the same option when Cleveland sort of ended up going up against Golden State in the finals. It was two players trying to fight against the tide of going up against an incredibly good team. And even when those two players were performing at a historic rate, the other players on the team failed to shine when the light failed to show up when the light shined the brightest. So even if they had a third option, it wouldn't have mattered because like the team needs to be that third option. Like the entire team as a whole needs to be that third option, and you aren't going to win just by adding boop, one other star to the offense. And but that's just me. Again, you could have so many. You could have like if you really think that they're just as good as they are, and like if they again if Kyrie actually would have played like how he normally would play, then maybe not every single one of these games would have been a blowout. And but that's just me. Now, I mean, and that was part of honestly, this was part of the reason why the finals was so boring. Like I expected at least like a few Kyrie Irving like legacy games that were coming out of this series because he's very accustomed to having these legacy games in a lot of these series. I mean, in the finals in 2016, he ended up having, 41 points in a game. He also shot the game winner. Even when he was losing in the postseason, when he was going up against the Celtics for all the way back in 2022, they were like Kyrie in game 1, he ended up scoring like 39 points or something like that. And that was a really dominant performance coming in from him. He lost, but I was expecting a dominant performance in front of the Celtics home crowd from Kyrie, and we just didn't get that from him. Not to mention the fact that, the rest of the Dallas Mavericks, they didn't seem to want to fight back at all in this series when going up against Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. It really it just seemed like it was just boring. Like that's really what it was. Like every single game was just a blowout. It was similar to it was very similar. Like this was the arguably the most boring finals since LeBron versus the Warriors because it seemed like the KD Warriors, I should say, because every single time that the Warriors would the only difference between the only reason why that series was not as boring is because Kyrie and LeBron were going ridiculous. And even in 2018, LeBron was going ridiculous. And not only that, the rest of the team, it was but the games were much more close, and they were a lot closer than this, series where it's like every single game is just, it's a blowout. And I'm just scrolling through, going all the way up to the beginning. Again, 107-89, that was the first game. Then in the next game, it was 105-98. The score, obviously, this wouldn't be considered a blowout, but the score was, it was a wide margin of victory. And then in the next matchup, again, it wasn't really, you wouldn't really call it a blowout, but it was another wide margin of victory. And the game was basically decided from the only reason why it was really even close was because the Celtics were about to choke this game. And the game was really decided from the jump. Not a single game came down to the wire in this series. Not a single one of these games. And then the closeout game, don't even get me started on the closeout game. It literally just looked like the Dallas Mavericks were already happy with not getting swept. And that is what ultimately killed the mood for me. Not only that, the media hyped this finals up way too much. I understand we're going a little bit over the segment's time limit, but still this has to be mentioned. This finals was way overhyped by the media. And it's you could already see all the narratives are changing. I mean, everyone now, before people were calling Luka and Kyrie the best backcourt duo that the NBA has seen in a very long time. Now they're saying, oh, if they would have played the Denver Nuggets, it would have been a better matchup. Oh, if the Celtics would have played the Timberwolves, it would have been a better matchup. Like, they're saying all of these things and completely changing the narrative of what it was and like what the series and what the playoffs really were. Like, it's just a complete narrative change. And it's like they went from, and everyone was picking Dallas to winning this game, despite the fact that the Celtics were the favorites. And one of the biggest pedals to, like, you know, Mavericks being the favorites were because the Mavericks didn't play a team that was injured. Are we serious? Like, the Celtics, they got tremendous amount of slack cut for them, or not really slack, but they got scrutinized tremendously because of the fact that they didn't play a single healthy team, even though, regardless whether the Miami Heat were healthy, regardless whether the Cavs were healthy, regardless whether the Pacers were healthy, the Celtics were going to beat them regardless. I'm sorry to burst everyone's bubble, and I am not a Celtics fan. I cannot stand the Celtics, but the only team, I've said this from the beginning, the only team that I thought could beat the Boston Celtics while they were healthy was the New York Knicks. That was the only team I thought. And like, they got clowned for making it all the way based off of like the teams getting injured, but it wouldn't have even mattered like at that time. Like, it made it easier for them, that's for sure. Yes, it definitely made them easier, but I don't think it would have mattered. Like, regardless whether the series was won in 6 games or whether it was won in 4, regardless, the Celtics were going to win all of those playoff series. And going into the finals, you know, everyone thought, oh, this is going to be very competitive because this is going to be the first time the Celtics are playing against a healthy team, when in reality, like, the Celtics team is just that good. They did not get any recognition for being that good. They never got any of that in the postseason. And I feel like that really played into the fact that the team just wasn't or like the series just wasn't it, because everyone was expecting the series to be a little bit more competitive. Everyone was expecting the Celtics to just, like, you know, be a little, like, I don't know, maybe like timid or scared, or maybe make the series, like, everyone thought that Dallas was going to make this series competitive because solely because they weren't an injured team, which makes 0 sense to me, because the Celtics realistically had every single piece in the book to a championship team, and they weren't getting any kind of credit for it. So and not only that, now the media is just, they're changing their opinions. I cannot stand this whatsoever. And it's like, this Celtics roster is probably one of the best rosters since the 2017-18 Golden State Warriors. And they're all under contract next season. So this is going to be crazy. Like, it's really, really going to be, they're going to most likely run it back. I wouldn't be surprised if they run it back. And this team, it's just been, they're just the better team. It's that simple. And it's like, I really cannot believe that that everyone was banking on the Dallas Mavericks in this series when they were clear cut, just the better team as a whole. Dre in the chat, he's saying, I agree. Thank you, Dre. Thank you for showing up in the chat. So with that, we are out of time for this second segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the third segment, where I talk a little bit about what's next for Dallas, because, you know, there's still a lot of questions. Obviously, we know the Celtics are going to run it back, but should Dallas run it back? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that after this second segment, or like after this break, my bad. So be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.